Here.
Mr. Derricks,
Here.
Ms. Ostendorf,
Here.
Ms. Tower,
Here.
Ms. Tift,
Here.
and Chair is here. So all 7 board members are here along with Superintendent Karsten Anderson. If I could ask you to rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
Of
States
the United States of America.
and to the republic for which it
Which it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and
with
justice
liberty
for
and
all.
justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Lisa, for always providing that flag for us. It's very much appreciated. I have asked Mr. Derricks to share our vision this evening.
Thank you. The mission of the Red Wing Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens.
Thank you, Arlen. The only item on our agenda this evening is the return to school plan. And because this is a special meeting, there can be no additions or changes to the agenda. And so I will go ahead and turn that over to Superintendent Anderson, who will walk us through what we need to be updated on this evening.
Thank you. I'll just give a real brief introduction, and then if you're okay with it, I'll hand it over to Shonda and then Amy to talk about some relevant issues. First of all, as you know, I made the decision in November to go from the learning models we were using that time to distance learning for all students. And I just want to make it clear to everyone who's watching is that, I take full responsibility for that decision. I don't think past or current board members should be, held responsible for that, because I'm the one who looked at the data and made the decision. Just as a reminder, the decision was made at that time for a couple of major factors. First of all, we had significantly rising COVID rates in the county. In addition, and possibly the more important factor with the school district, is that we were having a very challenging time finding enough staff members and substitutes, especially substitutes, to fill all of our personnel needs. That, in combination with the rising COVID rates, made me realize that we would have further difficulties, especially as we went through the holiday season, in terms of finding enough people. So that's the reason the decision was made, and I'll take full responsibility for that. Fast forward about a month, on December 21st, the school board voted for changes to the learning models. I won't go through each one. They're listed in the board packets. I've sent emails out to parents as well. But the plan is to bring back in-person learning for grades K through 12 on January 12th. A week later, we'd have in-person learning for grades 3 through 4, as well as hybrid learning for grades 5 through 12. So that's the current plan that was approved by the school board. There are some significant issues I think that we should cover together so that you have all the information you need and your questions answered. The first section has to do with safety protocols. Shonda Jorgensen, our district's health and safety consultant, will provide some information about a variety of safety related topics, and she'll be able to answer many of the questions that you might have in terms of our practices going back into in-person and or hybrid learning. So Shonda, you can take it from here.
Hi, everyone. For those of you, I know a few faces, but I know there's new ones. My name is Shonda Jorgensen, and I'm the health and safety consultant for Red Wing Public Schools. I've actually been with the district since December of 2012. So I've been around quite a long time. I used to be more of a background person. My job is to make sure the school district is OSHA compliant and also compliant with any other regulatory bodies that are out there. And then in March, COVID hit, and now I think everyone in Red Wing has my phone number, pretty sure. Carson, do you want me to talk about what specifically? Which direction do you want me to go? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I can certainly give you the topics as we go.
Sure.
First of all, could you give the board, the COVID response team's recommendation as far as quarantine periods?
Sure. Okay. So this was something that came out in the beginning of December. So originally during the fall and early winter, if you were a close contact to a positive person, you were required to quarantine for 14 days, meaning, the last day you had contact with that positive person, you would now have to stay home, stay out of the stores, stay away from people for a full 14 days. At the beginning of December, Minnesota Department of Health released new information on how people could possibly short quarantine, meaning we could shorten quarantine times from 14 days to 10 days and possibly 7 days. And so the COVID response team has been working pretty hard to figure out how we can implement this for both staff and students. It's going to require a lot of tracking. Each situation is different. There are certain stipulations that you have to meet to be able to short quarantine. You have to have a defined event for when you were exposed. So, for example, a birthday party, or you went to a sporting event or something, it had to have a beginning and an end. And you also cannot show any symptoms, and you also cannot have a positive person in your household. Those are the three first things that you have to happen in order to short quarantine. After that, you have to follow a set of rules. If you want a 7-day quarantine, you must take a COVID test on the 5th day after exposure, no sooner. And then you have to come up negative and provide us with a negative COVID test, a negative PCR test, so either a swab or a saliva test. We won't accept any other tests. And then you would be allowed to come back on the 8th day after exposure. But you're not done quarantining. You still have to monitor your symptoms, and you still have to kind of check in with how you're doing for the next 7 days after that for the full 14-day. And if you have one little symptom, you have one runny nose, you wake up with a sore throat, you're automatically out again and you have to get tested. So there are a lot of rules that you have to follow. Also, in order to short quarantine, when you do come back, you must stay 6 feet from people. You cannot go up to a student and become close contact, not even for 5 minutes, not for 1 minute. You have to stay 6 feet from everyone, and you have to wear a mask at all times. And so when we were trying to figure out how we could do this with students, we got a little panicky. We were worried about how this was going to work, because usually on an average day, we might have 1 to 2 staff that will call in with a close contact, but each building could possibly have 5 to 10 per day. And so deciding if they can short quarantine, if they don't qualify, was going to be a monstrous feat to accomplish. And Karsten, Pam, Jim, and I were in a meeting with various other people on Tuesday, and Minnesota Department of Health and Minnesota Department of Education strongly encouraged us not to allow students to short quarantine. It's just going to be a tracking nightmare, and our worry is something's going to fall through the cracks, and we're going to let somebody come to school when they're infectious, and they shouldn't be there. And so from that meeting and just our talking about it and working through it, we would like to allow staff to be eligible for short quarantine. Not everyone is going to be. They have to contact the COVID response team, and we have to have a conversation, pretty lengthy one, about what happened, who are you with, what are you going to do, how is it going to work before we'll approve a short quarantine. And then there are certain groups of staff that we will not allow to short quarantine, specifically teachers or paras that work with grades E through 2, because it is virtually impossible to stay 6 feet from that population. You can go in the classroom and try as hard as you can, but the little ones just like to congregate and get close to you. And if you want short quarantine, you must stay 6 feet from people. And so working through that, we just kind of, we like the idea of not giving it the students the opportunity to short quarantine. I know we might get pushback, but it's just we're introducing too much risk into the school. Also, Joni Gorman, who is the district nurse, she had a conversation with Mayo, and Mayo is going to follow our example. It's up to the school district to decide what they want to do for the district. And so if Mayo were to say, oh no, you can quarantine for 7 days, we can tell them, no, we don't agree with that. You have to do 14. And so Mayo has agreed to say, okay, we'll tell everyone they have to 14-day, and then it'll be up to you if they can shorten quarantine. And so that is a new thing that came out in the beginning of December.
Any questions for Shonda about the quarantine questions?
It's a lot of information, I know, sorry.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it made that whole consult earlier this week worth it.
Yeah.
Because we all felt better when, we would keep students with the previous quarantine guidelines and only consider the staff under those circumstances. So that, I think, made all of us feel much better.
It was one brick off our shoulders. I'm just imagining, the building COVID teams, they've got a lot going on, and just adding this extra piece to it, I think it would end up falling apart, and we have to stay vigilant. I mean, we still have COVID, it's still around. We have to be as safe as possible. And I think this is the safest way to go.
The next item, Shonda, has to do with masks and face shields for employees. I'll just give a brief introduction to this. There was varying guidance from the state with the Safe Learning Plan in terms of masks and face shields. So it's changed from one version on December 16th to the latest version on December 24th. The COVID response team did review the latest recommendations and does have a recommendation that they'd like to share with the board.
Yeah, it was when the regulation first came out, we were just kind of like, how are we going to do this? Because what they wanted was the staff to wear a mask and face shield at all times. And the idea behind that was to give the teachers an extra barrier. Students who get sick aren't really getting that sick. It's actually the staff that are more in danger of catching COVID. They're the ones that are going to get sicker. And so, their heart was in the right place, their idea was in the right place, but I don't know if you've ever put on a mask, put on a shield, and tried to have a conversation or try to project to a group of students for longer than 10 minutes. It's very taxing, it's very fatiguing. And so somehow they came down about a week later saying, their verbiage is, we highly recommend that you require. We've done a poll of at least all the big 9 schools, and we're kind of in line with everybody else about how we will highly recommend that you wear both, but we're not going to require it. But we will put some guidelines out about when it's really should be necessary, or where it should, you should be wearing it. Specifically, if let's say you gave your lesson and now you're kind of walking amongst the students to help them on an individual basis, that might be a good time to put that face shield on. You're going to be closer to the student, so you're not going to have to try to project your voice as much, and then that's going to give you the extra protection. Also during small group activities, or really any time where it's hard to stay 6 feet from someone. If you're going to be in close proximity to someone, keep it under 15 minutes, but if you add that face shield, that's just another barrier to protect you from potentially catching COVID. And so we'd like to put that verbiage out that says we highly recommend it, but we won't require it. And also the enforcing of it, we're just worried that someone's going to take it off because they need a break, and then someone comes along and says, "Oh, I saw so and so not wearing it." It's just it's going to get out of control, and the less stress we put on these teachers, the better. They're already tired. They're already overworked, and the more we add to it, it's just the worse it's going to get. So the idea was to give them an extra barrier, and we'll encourage them to wear them in certain situations for sure, but we're not going to require it all day, every day.
Also, I'll add that the custodial department does have a surplus of face shields if anyone desires to use them. So we will make sure that we have enough on hand, because we want to give everyone, every employee, the chance to wear both a mask and a shield.
Yep, and we actually ordered new ones, and we're getting some more or a different style from the Southeast regional team that should be picked up hopefully beginning of next week. And what's going to happen is Alan is going to send an email out to everyone saying, hey, we have these two type of masks or these two types of face shields. Let us know which one we prefer and we'll send one over to you. We did give every staff member at the beginning of the school year a face shield, but I know it's been a while. They could have gotten lost, broken, that kind of thing. So we do have the equipment to give to everyone who wants them.
And then what about the latest as far as vaccinations, Shonda, for employees?
Okay, so school districts or school employees are in the 1B category. So we're going to be kind of in line with the same essential workers, first responders, that kind of thing. Now 1B is a little bit misleading because right now they're vaccinating group 1A, but there's group 1A1, 1A2, 1A3. So it's not, just a big chunk of people and we're in the next chunk. And so what we've heard from Goodhue County, who we're working with, and also Joni was contacted by Mayo recently, we're hearing late winter, early spring. And so as soon as we know any information as far as distribution, we'll let you know. They will come to our site, but they won't come to every school. They'll come to 2 different sites in our campus, and then we'll organize it so people who want to get it can get it. It's not going to be mandatory. We can't require it, but we're going to strongly encourage it. The vaccine is a set of 2 shots. You are fully protected 6 weeks after your first shot. So that's good. But the thing about that is just because you have the vaccine doesn't mean you can't get COVID, that you can't spread it, and that you can't be a close contact or test positive. So even though you have the vaccine, you can't ditch the mask, you can't ditch social distancing, you still have to follow safety protocol. Especially if you do end up getting it and you don't know it, you could spread it to other people. You can be infectious. So, and the reason that we're saying that now is because the vaccine is so new, we don't know what's going to happen in the long term. So maybe in 6 months, this summer, we'll have a better idea of, okay, now the vaccine, we know for sure will protect these people and you won't be infectious. But that's the information that we have right now.
One thing I forgot to include in the written documentation has to do with testing of staff members. Could you give us an update about that as well?
Sure. And of course, this was dropped on us the day before Christmas Eve. And so we were scrambling to get it done. The Minnesota Department of Health wants every school district to offer testing to every school employee, not just people that work in the building, but bus drivers, contracted employees that work at school board members. Give them an opportunity to come in and get a saliva test every other week. We're going to start this on January 20th. And Joni and I right now are going to each school to kind of get their testing sites set up and kind of work on the flow and how the schedules are going to work. And so every Wednesday you'll be able to sign up and go in and take a saliva test. And then 48 hours after the laboratory receives that test, you will get emailed if you are positive or negative. And the idea with this is to try to catch those asymptomatic people that aren't showing symptoms. They're just going about their day, and trying to get them so we can get them quarantined and hopefully stop the spread. We did a kind of a soft opening at River Bluff on this last Wednesday. Of their 116 employees that were eligible, they invited everyone within the county. That's a Goodhue County Education District employee. They had 12 people that showed up. So partially that could be that they're not fully back yet. A lot of the schools are still distance learning, and so it was inconvenient for people to show up. But this is a completely voluntary process. It's not a requirement. You don't have to do it. If you do it 1 week, you're not required to do it the next week. If you don't do it the first week, doesn't mean you can't do it the next time. So we're not sure how it's going to work yet. The first setup in every school building, we're going to set it up as if everyone is going to get tested. And then from that, we'll see, okay, well, we got maybe 25% participation. So maybe the next testing, let's set up for 50% and just kind of gauge how it goes. And, we'll see how it goes. I don't know. how successful it's going to be. I hope really, people are just afraid. They've never done it before. They don't know what to expect. And so maybe the brave ones will step up and take the test, and they'll go back to their coworkers and say, oh, it was easy. You just do this, and you're done. And now you're negative. The results will not be emailed to the district. It goes directly to the employee and the employee only. But we do require that if you do test positive, you have to contact the COVID team. Just like if you were to test positive from the Mayo Clinic or any other clinic, you cannot be in our building if you are positive. Also, part of the testing is you have to answer a series of questions, and they'll ask if you have symptoms. Hopefully everyone in the building will say no, because if they have symptoms, they should be home. Don't come to school when you have symptoms just to test. So, I think as we go along, it's just going to become part of the routine. And we hope for 100% participation, but it's not mandatory. So we just got to see kind of how it goes.
Also, Shonda, one of the board members asked for information about safety protocols for employees. And we've already just covered a lot of those protocols. But again, off the top of your head, what other protocols are we implementing in the district that will help with students and employees?
Sure. Well, one of the biggest protocols, and one of the protocols that we fought for, the administration worked hard on doing, is the 6-foot distance between every person in the building. Every school, every room, every cafeteria, break room, every room is set up so when you sit in a chair, you will be 6 feet from everyone. When we do contact tracing of a positive person, we go, okay, I was in the lunchroom with such and such and such a person. Well, were you sitting in the seats that were provided to you? Yes. Well, then we don't have to worry about contact tracing because we know they were 6 feet from each other. And we encourage everyone to stay that 6 feet. Situations are different. That's why we say, were you within 6 feet of someone for more than 15 minutes? And so that's where teachers were, well, I can't get close to my kids. You can, but be very careful. Monitor your time. Think about how long you're there. So I think, honestly, that's one of the biggest ones. And it's stayed that way. It's going to stay that way when we come back. And it's really helped contribute to the minimal spread. I think we've had 1 case of spread in the district over a 5-month period. And on top of masks, face shields, we just talked about our ventilation in the health and safety meeting today. The school follows the EPA's indoor air quality program they have for the last 20 years. And the EPA has said that if you are following that program, you have adequate ventilation to work with this virus. And Kevin expanded a little bit on it. We're doing more than we normally do, bringing more outside air in and more inside air out and circulating it more. I can't go into details. I'm not good at that, the technical stuff, but our ventilation is far above a lot of other places. Even if you go to the mall, it may not be, but schools in general are very safe. And if they follow this indoor air quality, we're good. It also helps with, you always hear about, oh, what about the viral load per room? If we're in this room for so long, do we have to leave so the viral load will lower? Well, because of that constant ventilation and the amount of ventilation we're sending through there, the viral load never gets to a point where it's going to be dangerous. And so if you're sitting in the classroom, you have your mask on, you could be in there all day and there's not a chance of you catching it because the virus there's such a high viral load in the air. Also, every teacher has hand sanitizer in their room. They have, regular disinfectant sanitizer that at the elementary schools they can use at any time they feel like it. If they're just like, oh, I need to clean my room, they can. High school teachers, they clean their room between each class. They also clean high touch point areas. Custodians are doing a phenomenal job keeping these buildings clean. This is truly a team effort. And, we started off strong with the model that we had. We sustained it for a very long time. Going to distance learning was based on a lot of factors, like Karsten said. Now those factors have changed a little bit because, we were waiting to hit the 50 cases per 10,000, and they said that we have to go distance learning. Well, now they're saying most counties are over 100. So that's really not a number that we can really gauge on. So we're kind of turning internal again and go, what are we doing to keep our buildings safe? And really it's the having people call us and tell us when they're sick. Don't, encourage them, call us when you're sick, families call us. So we're not letting people that are sick in the building, keeping people 6 feet apart, giving them sanitizing tools and everything to keep their rooms clean. And just encouraging everyone to, this is us. It's not just about you. It's about everybody you're around. And so I do this for other districts, and Red Wing I love Red Wing. You guys are doing a great job. So.
And then also just a couple more things that we've done, and I think all of you realize this, but for people listening in on YouTube, I'll at least share this. We did decide to reopen Jefferson School for the primary purpose of just making sure that we have enough spaces so that we could spread our elementary kids through an additional building. And then that, along with having our specialist teachers and other teachers paired with classroom teachers, enabled us to really lower the class size limits throughout grades K through 4 in particular. And that enables us to maintain those social distancing guidelines, even when we're in person. And I think that's the key, is that we set up our model so that social distancing guidelines are expected even when we're in person learning for grades K through 4. So I thought that was a really good move. And of course, all this hinges on the resources that the school board was willing to spend to give us the greatest level of flexibility throughout the year. And it's disheartening when our kids are learning distance and we have buildings operating. I get that, but at the same time, we spent the resources so that we could make decisions about learning models to more restrictive models and less restrictive models. Without that investment, I think we would have been in distance learning for most or the entire school year. I have no doubt about that. So another one that I think of that's really impressive, George Nemenich and Al Hartnick, and I'm sure others came up with a great plan in the high school as far as one-way hallways. And I've been real impressed with that because we want to limit those interactions even in the hallways. Kids don't use lockers. They have to take their stuff to rooms and then carry it with them and those kinds of things. But that's just a quick snapshot of some of the work we've done. But Shonda's on the call right now, so if there are any questions about safety protocols, we can certainly ask her questions. And then after Shonda, we'll go into human resources for the paid sick time, as well as a staff member and substitute availability update.
Go ahead, Anna.
So you may have already gotten an email about this, but I was just hoping that we have had reports from, some people that in the schools that the desks are closer than 6 feet or have been moved or things like that. So, is that possible to do kind of a walkthrough again before kids go back into the building, just to make sure that they are where they're supposed to be?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And I don't doubt desks have been moved. We set them all 6 feet when they came in. I'm sure they've inched around a bit. Yeah, we can do a walkthrough, and it would be just as easy as we can send our custodians around and just tell them, hey, take your 6 foot pole. I don't know, some of you might have seen me walking around with my 6 foot PVC pipe. Just go around and check all your rooms. And that's a simple thing to do. So for sure we can do that.
Yeah, one good thing is that if we stay with the plan, that K through 2 would be in the building on Tuesday, and then the others would come in later. So that would give us a little time to do those reviews in phases. But you're right, Shonda. I've heard multiple people talking about the person walking around the high school with a 6 foot pipe to make sure that we're following our guidelines.
I don't get embarrassed. It's okay.
I just want to take a minute to say thank you to you, Shonda, and the COVID response team. I know how extensively and deeply you've worked to plan through all of these different scenarios. And I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the parents and the students for working so tirelessly at making sure that our buildings are safe. And by the successful way we've been able to maneuver through the fall, we know that your work is paying off. And so just thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. That's, that's our job. And we want kids in the building too. We want it to be successful. Sometimes I will throw stuff at people and they'll get annoyed because, oh, we have to do this. Well, yes, but if we want to be safe, we need to do this. And they finally come around and now they see the success of it. And so I'm just glad to be a part of it. And I'm glad it's working. I'm glad that we're doing as well as we have, and hopefully from here on out, just as well from here on out. So
I'll add that the other members of the COVID response team are Don Wettern, our Community Education and Recreation Director, as well as Joni Gorman, our licensed school nurse. And so those three are the COVID response team, which means they have responsibilities not only during the week, but they also rotate on the weekends to take calls from people so we can do our quarantine checking even on the weekends. So I know they're putting in a lot of extra time than anyone ever would have imagined. So I'll echo what Pam said, and thank you, Shonda, and Don and Joni.
You're welcome.
Shonda, would you mind staying on the call, through the discussion today, just in case we have a question for you? I kind of want to make sure that everyone has a chance to get the information they need.
Yeah, I threw a lot out, so it's probably going to take a little process. And oh wait, I had a question. So yeah, for sure, I'll say.
Well, thanks, Shonda.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
If we can go into Amy French, our Human Resources Manager, who will talk about two different issues. First, the emergency paid sick leave through the Families First Coronavirus Act, and then staff and substitute availability. But before you talk a little bit about the FFCRA, I want to tell you I'll give a quick background and then she can give details if there are questions. But the federal government had mandated that employers needed to provide up to 80 hours of FFCRA leave for people resulting from like being sick with COVID or being quarantined, those kinds of things. That expired on December 31st, but there was another federal law that gave employers the opportunity to extend that through March 31st. And so that's kind of the issue that we should decide, preferably tonight or Monday night, as far as whether or not we should provide that voluntary paid sick leave. And I have to be honest, at first when I heard of this possibility, I was not in favor of it. And then I kept thinking about it, and then finally saw an issue from the School Board Association, the leader, that gave a sample resolution about what that could look like. And I liked it for several reasons. First of all, it would apply to all employees, not just the people we have, we would develop MOUs with. I think it resolves any concerns about setting up MOUs with different employee groups or considering alternatives. So I think it's a simple solution. And then, of course, more important, I think it's the right way to go because it's a safer solution for everyone. Certainly, if we have employees who are not feeling well or have COVID, we want them and expect them to stay at home. Some people are living paycheck to paycheck. Others, don't want to use up their sick leave for a variety of reasons. And so our thinking is that we could approve the resolution that would give the employees the ability to use any remaining paid sick leave that they did not use before December 31st in the same manner that it was being used before. So that's the recommendation of Amy, Jackie, Sherry Johnson, who oversees special education, teachers and paras, as well as myself. And again, I've changed my tune. So at first I wasn't in favor, and now I think it's the right thing to do. As far as cost for that, it's really impossible to gauge because we don't know how many would access that paid leave moving forward. Sometimes they have sick leave, or there are just so many variables in there. It's hard to say, but the short answer is that the cost would be their regular rate of pay during the time that they might miss. So, but if you have any questions about the criteria for meeting that leave or other details, Amy's on the call and she'll answer any questions that you may have about that.
Karsten, you kind of stole my thunder. You said my spiel. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. I do
Sorry about
believe
that, Amy.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm glad that you got it all in there, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has about the FFCRA.
Holly's in the queue.
Yeah, thank you, Karsten. And yes, Amy, I would like you to paraphrase what Karsten just said so I can hear it from two different people and digest it that way. That's how I learn. So if you can paraphrase, and it's not a test, because I want to like wrap my head completely around it.
So the Expanded Family Medical and Leave Act, which encompassed the FFCRA that rolled out in April, allowed, and it's not just, it's 80 hours or 10 days based over a 2-week period of time of your salary. So it's not a full 80 hours. And like if you work 35 hours a week, you don't get to use 35, and then 10, for instance. It's based on an 80-hour work week. So if you work 35, you're eligible for up to 35 per week of FFCRA leave. We have had quite a few people utilize that. It has prevented us from having to dip into the sub pool as much, which is also costly. The reasons why most people are taking it is to either care for a child who has been subject to quarantine. They themselves have been subject to quarantine, tested positive, awaiting a result. Those are the big reasons. And our concern is that if we have people, like Karsten said, return because they can't afford to be off work, we're just going to create a hardship for everybody. So I checked in with some of the other districts. I know Jackie did also. It's about half and half. Some still have not made the decision on what they're going to do. Some have chosen to allow people to use their unused sick leave that's still available. So for instance, you don't always have to use the 80 hours. It's not a one and done. You can use it intermittently or consecutively. So if somebody is only gone for 2 days or 5 days, then they still have a remaining bank of FFCRA leave to use, hours or days, depending on if you're exempt or non-exempt. Does that answer your question?
What would make them exempt or non-exempt? What would the
Non-exempt is an hourly employee, such as food service. Exempt is Karsten, salaried. So if you're an hourly employee, that's where the 10 days or 80 hours comes into for the FFCRA.
Yeah, and again, it's just not me, it'd be anyone who's salaried. So it'd be teachers, principals,
Right.
Directors, variety of people.
And Holly, just to clarify a little, when Amy says exempt and non-exempt, she's not talking about the FFCRA leave. She's talking just about job classifications.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Amy?
Amy, could you go over?
Anna had hers in, and then Nikki had her hand raised.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, Anna.
I
Okay.
just wanted to clarify real quick that this is, as my understanding, and make sure I'm right, that this is not adding an additional 80. So for example, if somebody had to use 80 hours in October for a quarantine, they've used it up. They would not be eligible.
Correct.
If they have to quarantine in February, they would not have any time left to use. But
Correct.
if somebody didn't use that 80 hours, any portion of it, or, if they had any of it left from earlier, they could potentially use it if they need to quarantine again, or there's a new situation.
Yes, this is only for unused leave, and this would expire March 31st.
And by the way, I believe that's the date that's in the federal legislation. So that's why MSBA included that date in the resolution that was included recently from a couple of days ago. So I just chose that date. We may want to review that a month from now or 2 months from now to see if it should be extended. But at least that's the recommendation that we have.
Nikki, did you have your hand raised?
Yes, Anna essentially asked my question but my thing is okay, so what happens to those teachers who it was the one shot, they used the 80, what happens to them if like their family gets it or if they get it again and they have to quarantine again? They're just...
Well, there are options. The teachers have a sick leave bank. That's an option if you've used up all of your sick leave. Teachers do have most of them have sick leave available to some extent, but we have ways, we can work through a leave situation, and it would probably be very specific to their situation, depending on how many days they would need, if we can accommodate them to work remote. It's a little hard to speak to just in a general case. I think in that case, it would be very case specific.
And that all sounds really nice and all, but I think some of our staffing has heard a lot of talk and not any action on their behalf. So I don't want to get off topic and stuff, but this is something I definitely want to dive into further on down the road.
Any other questions for Amy? All right, back to you, Kirsten.
Well, thank you, Amy. Appreciate your work on these HR issues during a challenging time. The last area that I'll cover has to do with compliance with the Safe Learning Plan. We talked about that quite a bit earlier this week on Monday night. We did have a meeting the following morning with representatives from the Minnesota Department of Health, Minnesota Department of Education, Goodhue County Public Health, and others. Pam Rowe, Jim Bryant, Sherry Johnson, Joni Gorman, a variety of people were on that call. And it was a very productive call. And I'm not sure what Pam and Jim think, but I felt a lot better after the call. We shared our plan returning to school, asked them questions about whether or not we'd given appropriate communications, before the specified deadlines. We asked questions about, the fact that we were planning to bring in our students with intensive service needs earlier than what we had talked about in December. My reason for that was just to make sure that we are still in compliance with the Safe Learning Plan, and they clearly indicated that we would be. So I felt really good about that. I don't see any particular violations of the Safe Learning Plan. I haven't heard anyone say that we had them, so that makes me more confident moving forward, because we want a safe situation for our kids, and we want high quality education, but we also want to comply with the governor's orders and the Safe Learning Plan. So I won't go over all the details about each area about the rolling starts or the first starting date. The information's in the packet. I know we covered it last week. I did include one section about the intensive service needs, though, as far as communications about that. So it's slightly different than last time, but again, we did vet it with people from those two organizations.
Go ahead, Holly.
I was just hoping that you and Jim could just share like a minute or so of what your takeaway was from it. I'd like to hear your perspectives.
Certainly, I'll speak first. It was a well-attended meeting by different variety of people around the state, and we grilled them pretty good about specific questions about the plan. Did we meet the deadline? Can the special people with the special needs and all that, are we okay bringing them in? And they were said that they were strongly recommended that be done right when we're doing it. The plan, we talked about the plan, about the notification. When we released our plan, when we decided on our plan, and they were all, Heather Hirsch, I think is her name, Heather. She's the one real leader on that. And she said, no, you're right in line with what you need to do. Everything is good to go forward. She saw no problem with it. And like I said, we reeled on specific. I don't have the exact questions, but it's pieces of the plan and how we come about it and how we presented it were discussed, and they were all totally in favor of it. We even talked about the short team quarantine, the long, and all that. And Shonda and them were there. And I came away thinking, everything we've done and planned and prepared for is being done right. So, thank you.
Really, that's all I have as far as a presentation. The only thing that I'll note, typically when we have a resolution, we want to present it and then give people a couple of weeks to think about it, process it, ask questions, and those kinds of things. Obviously with our current return to school plan, that'll start on Tuesday, hopefully, that kind of limits our time frame. So there is a recommendation for us to consider as far as approving the resolution to extend the deadline for leaves granted by the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. That's included as a recommendation. And, I did include a copy of the resolution that we could approve tonight. So, there may be some questions about that. And then, right now the plan is to bring back kids, as I had included in the chart at the beginning of this background information. If there is a desire to change that plan, that would still be in compliance with the Safe Learning Plan, we could certainly entertain motions to that effect. I believe strongly that, and I understand the last year's school board made the recommendation to go forward with the plan, but I also want to respect our new board members and really all board members to make sure that they have enough information so they're aware of what is going to be happening. And so that's why we have the special meeting again tonight.
Jennifer, you're in the queue.
Yeah, thank you, Pam. I would like to make a motion to approve the resolution to extend the deadline for the leaves granted by the Families First Coronavirus Response Act.
This is Anna. I'll second.
All right, motion on the table by Jennifer, seconded by Anna. Any discussion?
This is Jim. I like it. In the private sector where I work, I manage a business. We took advantage, an employee of ours took advantage of that. It was the right thing to do. And that employee was actually out longer than that. And so that the very, very appreciative of the fact that it was available to that person. We are happy to do it. So it is like Ms. French said, it's 30. If you're 30 hours a week, that's what it is. The other thing, just she didn't mention, is we learned is this. In our case, it went over Thanksgiving, the holiday, so that an employer can decide to include the holidays or extend it those, and we chose to extend it, which was the right thing to do. So no, this is a good thing for the good thing for us to do for those that are in need of it. So,
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? All right, then we will start a roll call vote. We will start with Anna Ostendorf.
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Ms. Tift,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. So the resolution passes 7-0. Thank you. All right. Are there any other motions that anyone would like to make at this time regarding the back to school plan? Arlen?
Yeah, I'm trying to recall the exact wording of the motion that was made on December 21st. My recollection was going to come to the board on January 4th. And in regards to making sure things, I don't remember the exact wording, but we were in compliance with the state and everything else. So if the motion was to keep going, that's great. If we need to reaffirm it, then somebody should make a motion. I'm not going to stir it up one way or another. I'm on board with us bringing our kids back to school as the plan is. But Carson, do you remember the exact wording of the motion back in December?
You know, it's a good question, Arlen. I know that January 4th was at least discussed. Lisa, do you have a rough draft of the minutes from the 21st?
Yes, I was just pulling them up. Would you like me to share them?
That'd be great.
All right, one moment, please.
Now, I believe these will be a draft copy of the minutes. We just had some communication issues because, you know, we wanted to have Heidi take a look at them first. So that's why they weren't approved in early January.
I believe it was to approve the plan that you presented, whatever your wording was.
Can everyone read that writing?
It says this, the motion by Derek, seconded by Fair, to approve the following plans subject to confirmation of compliance with the governor's orders. Implementation transition plan to return to school, including option 1 for the timeline if staff and substitute availability is adequate. On January 4th, 2021, we are in compliance with the governor's orders. And then it says what the dates there. January 12th for in-person hybrid for intensive service needs and in-person for grades K through 2. And on the 19th, we start in-person for Cobble on Fridays, in-person for grades 3 and 4, and hybrid for grades 5 through 12. So that is
Again,
the previous.
these minutes have not been approved yet, so, you know, they're a draft copy. And there was kind of a complicated discussion because we had the option and then we were talking about a lot of different things, including students with intensive service needs. And so, you know, this is Heidi's version of those minutes.
Holly, your name is in the queue.
Thanks, Pam. So, Karsten, as we look through this and we contemplate heavily, could you please review our district's policy around protective equipment for staff to wear? What is the expectation?
Sure. I did include 2 documents as extras with the board meeting. One would be the policy on I can't remember the title, but it talks about policy for face coverings. and that would be for students and staff members. We also have the Safe Learning Plan dated December 24th, so it's also included as an extra, and there's some information about face coverings there.
Can we post that so we can read it together?
Sure. Lisa, could you look on the extras website so we can show that document? Holly, are you talking about the Safe Learning Plan or the policy?
The policy specifically.
Oh, sure. So I think it's in the 800 series, Lisa.
Atta girl. Woo, woo. You're so good. Can you blow it up for my little 48-year-old eyes? Thank you.
Holly, do you want that read out loud, or do you want this just to be on here for reference for people who are watching?
I would really appreciate if we could read out loud what the expectation is for staff in regards to wearing masks or a face shield, so that we're all on the same page today about what is involved.
I think it's further down.
And then Shonda is also still on the call, so we might want to invite her in as well, just in case there's some questions. And I need to step out just for a minute and then I'll be back, but you can get started.
This policy is 5 pages long. The expectation that I hear that I am reading through says face coverings. Let's see. No. It talks about what the definition of a face covering is.
I think maybe the most succinct is just under the general statement of policy and letter C, that unless there's an exception described in part 4, which is basically like being outside or those types of eating, that all students, staff, other people present indoors in school buildings and district offices or riding on school transportation vehicles are required to wear a face covering. And then of course there's those definitions of what constitutes a face covering.
Thank you, Anna.
So we reviewed this, went through this thoroughly back in August, and we're still having issues with the requirement around this policy. And I'm not going to get into disciplinary whatever, because I'm not privy to how that's been handled within schools, nor do I need to be. What I'm concerned with is with moving forward on Monday, and there is a situation that staff don't feel comfortable, what is their recourse?
Yeah, what we are telling people to do is to notify their immediate supervisor if they have a concern, and then that individual will investigate. So, for example, if there's an employee in the district with the concerns about a colleague or maybe a student, then that person, well, let's say a high school, teacher, should go to Mr. Nemenich, and then Mr. Nemenich would talk to the complainant to find out more information about what happened, and then Mr. Nemenich would go ahead and investigate. Sometimes that might include Amy French as part of the discussion because she's the human resources manager. Sometimes Mr. Nemenich, for example, would deal with it directly himself. So that just kind of a general example, if that makes any sense.
It makes complete sense. And I just want to reaffirm that for everybody moving forward, not the board per se. But if the calls come to us or if the emails come to us, this still isn't happening. What are we to do then moving forward in lieu of calling the principal ourselves, which we're not supposed to do, right?
Yeah, obviously this is an important issue,
It's
so it
huge.
has to be resolved. And the first step is to encourage the person to go directly to the principal or the building leader or department leader. So for example, if it's a custodian, an evening custodian, let's say, then Alan Gaylor would be the one who would take that lead. So it really depends on who the concern is about. But the best thing to do is to have that person go directly to the supervisor. If the person feels that nothing is happening at that level, then I think it's time to come to me as the supervisor of the supervisor, and then I would have someone investigate it from there.
I just have one follow-up question with this, and I agree with you, Karsten. Is it at all something that districts are looking at to have people provide a doctor's note in the event that they cannot physically wear a mask?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for bringing that up. That is very important because there are some students and staff members who may have, I'm not sure if the official term would be an accommodation,
Right.
But there may be a valid reason why they cannot wear a face mask or a face shield. And it's truly on a case-by-case basis. And that's one reason why a supervisor needs to be involved as soon as possible, because a supervisor would be able to determine if there are some exceptions for a particular student or staff member. And then, that might be the investigation. We have to be very careful about sharing particular information about students or staff. And so, we're careful about that, but, the building leader or the department leader would be the one who would know that information.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
thank you.
yeah, I just want to then end my part here. It's possible the board may have to come back again, or the policy committee, and if it continues to be an issue, we may have to look at putting it in our policy. So I just want to preface us for that, because we are going to be wearing masks. My take on it is for quite some time. And I don't want us to get lost in March, spring break, and everyone's exhausted and masks are hanging off ears because nobody's gotten COVID, in their periphery.
Yeah, that was a concern that I believe Arlen had brought up in early January or late December, because we have had some instances where, we've received reports that, some employees are not wearing masks or maybe not wearing them appropriately. And I know that our leaders have taken those issues, at least generally, seriously. But if there are doubts about that or questions about it, then, we want to know about it, obviously.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's important to note that, what Shonda had said earlier about, maybe somebody took a break 6 feet apart and then somebody walks by and sees that break, and then they assume that that person has been non-compliant all day or all the time. So I think if we can put this back on the individual administrators to be compliant, I think that's important.
I know there are a lot of students who want to be back in the building to see their friends. And in order for that to continue, then everyone, and I mean everyone, who can wear a mask had better be wearing a mask. That's all there is to it. And we have to take that seriously. I'm thinking that students will appreciate the fact that they can come back, and they're going to take it seriously once again. And then we're going to have to, the building leaders are going to have to deal with the comfort level increasing, and then suddenly it's not taking us seriously. So we're going to have to take that to heart.
I think you're right, Karsten, though. So many kids just want to get back in the buildings, and I think they're willing to do what it takes. But I think that we also, as a district, need to send a very firm message that if you're not willing to be compliant on this, you will be sent home. No ifs, ands, and buts about it.
Yeah, and I know that has happened because we have taken that seriously. And so some students have been removed from school, because of not wearing the face mask. Now, I say all that, I'm really proud overall as far as how our students and staff members and visitors have taken this expectation. So overall, I'm very proud, but we're a people institution. We have over 400 employees. We have perhaps over 1,000 kids in the building on a certain day. And so we're not perfect, just like no other district is perfect, but we need to do the best job we possibly can.
Holly.
Thanks, Pam. I just want to say that I know the board right before the break worked extremely hard on coming up with this and coming to conclusion and resolution. And I admire that. And I know I wasn't there. I am not in the position right now to reverse it. That's my personal take. I am concerned about the 7 through 12 hybrid mix. I'm concerned about the 5th and 6th grade hybrid stuff. That concerns me immensely. Special populations, little people going back to school, 3rd and 4th graders going back to school. I'm on board. Kids Junction has knocked it out of the ballpark. They've proven it can be done for 10 months. The school district has done an amazing job, but we have set up elementary in a beautiful position. We have not set up high school as beautiful as we have the elementary. And that has posed a ton of problems. We have a couple weeks to still think about that, but I'm not in any move to make a motion to reverse me personally. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thanks, Holly. I think that we've heard all of the background. Oh, Nikki, go ahead. If you could actually, I don't always see that hand raised on my screen very quickly. So if you could just put your name in the queue, that will help me immensely because that's where I look for it. So thank you. I'll go for you, Nikki, and then Arlen is after.
I don't know how to put my name in the queue.
Oh, okay.
Mary since kindergarten to raise your hand. So I wanted to touch on, I have been doing my own homework. I spent the last 2 days, I took off, finding the information that was missing for me. I found out a lot, and I just wanted to touch off of Holly's. I wasn't here when that plan was made, so I'm not in a position, but you better believe I've engaged this community, and I've heard a lot of voices, and I'm going to be going from here on up. So I just wanted to put my stance on it. Again, like I like how Holly presented her stand on it, and I just kind of wanted to follow with that.
Arlen?
Yeah, just go back on the masks part of this situation. Like I say, I'm on board with our getting our kids back. I think the way we've set things up, but I want to make it known that I positively will do all I can to make sure that our mask policy is vigorously enforced. If it isn't, this is not going to work. I know I sat on policy committee when this was put out. I'm not just quite sure where it was. I asked a question on our students. My understanding was if the students can't wear a mask or won't wear a mask, they will not be in school. They'll be taking distance learning or whatever it is. That's my understanding. But this also applies to our staff. If they cannot follow it, we need to discipline them if they don't. And I'm not saying an occasional blip here, oh, I came out and I just had my mask on for a moment. I'm talking about the chronic abuser. We have to absolutely make sure that we do enforce this policy. And I expect that will take place. And if it doesn't, you'll be hearing my wrath. Thank you.
Thanks, Arlen. Anna?
Thank you. So I just have a couple of questions kind of as a result of some of the concerns that we've heard, especially from the teachers, and from other community members. So, right now our county COVID rate is higher than it was even expected to be today. Like what the projected number, we're higher than even that, which has gone up a little bit since last week. I was really, hoping to see that it was continuing that downward trend, which it isn't. And that number is above that 50 threshold. And I know with the governor's plan for school, that the younger kids don't necessarily have to follow that original threshold that they had come out with, in the fall. But I'm just curious Karsten, what your feeling would be, like what would make us go back into distance only? Because before it had kind of been like, oh, if we get above that 50, we're going to distance. Now, if we're going back and we're already above 50, what's the next threshold? And I know that there's more that comes into play than just those numbers. But I think that's a question that people have, and rightly so. And then, and I apologize if I just haven't seen this come out from the district, but I'm wondering what information we have been communicating to parents about whether or not they've traveled over the break. We're hearing from teachers whose students are talking about how they went to Florida and went to lots of different places. I know we can't say you have to quarantine for that 2 weeks, but, is that like a reasonable expectation that parents, if you took your kids, to go visit 10 states away, you better make sure that you've quarantined when you come back, or that that you're not bringing, extra back to school with you.
Yeah, and if I miss one of your questions, Anna, feel free to circle back. Really, we continue to monitor those county rates each week, 1 to 2 times a week. So on Thursdays, of course, we get the information from the state that would show the actual rate. Just a reminder that the information that was given today is really for a 2-week periods 2 weeks ago. So it's always a lagging indicator, so we want to be clear about that. For example, the rate today would not include any increases because of holiday travel or holiday get-togethers, just because of how that works. And, one thing that I think is important to note, the state came up with these rates in probably June. And this is not a criticism of MDE, MDH, or the governor or anyone, but they truly were arbitrary. I don't think there was a strong framework that they made those decisions on, just because COVID is totally new. We've never experienced anything like this, at least in our generation. So when they came up with the data points, I truly think it was arbitrary. They could have given us lower data or a lower framework or a larger one, and it'd still be arbitrary. So at the same time, though, we started the year with really low rates in the county, and they crept up, and then they significantly increased after Halloween. And that's when it was pretty alarming to me, not just the actual rate, but how quickly they were increasing. So that was a big factor, when I decided to move the whole district into distance learning. Now, another factor at that time, as I mentioned earlier, is that, with all the talk about the rising rates, and there were some staff members who were quarantined, a lot of concerns. We had a lot of staff members who were staying home. And we also had a real challenge bringing in people to serve as substitutes, because there was a lot of things that were unknown, a lot of concerns expressed about the rising rates, and we just were not able to fill those positions. So there were some times, I know one day we were 5 people short. And in some businesses, like a large business with 400 employees, they can get by with that. In a school system that totally relies on person-to-person supervision of kids, being 5 short down throughout the district is a big deal, because so many are committed to a certain spot. And unlike a normal situation, we can't split up the classes into different rooms or combine 2 classes, because that would violate our social distancing guidelines. So when I made that decision, rising county COVID rates was a big deal, but even a bigger deal for me was not having enough staff available to appropriately supervise kids. And that was even after we had sent multiple classes home because there was a quarantine situation involving, people in those classrooms, and we were still short. So to make a long story short, I think those were arbitrary numbers, understandably. What else could they do? And now things have settled down. They've stabilized. They've come down since those highs in the early winter. So we're very pleased about that. Right now they're around 70, maybe 75. And I don't have a specific threshold that I would say, oh, we got to go to distance learning tomorrow. Because I really think it depends not only on that rate, but then also if it's rising or if it's decreasing, and then how confident we are with the protocol. So that's my long-winded answer to your first one. I don't have a specific threshold, but I will say that I think if the board members are available on Monday nights or would be available for a quick meeting on Thursday, Pam, Jim, and I were talking earlier this week about our willingness to call an emergency meeting, because if the rates are skyrocketing, then I think we better, either I need to do something or we need to do something right away. And I agree with Jim's analysis. If we're going into distance learning, or possibly, then I think that would probably qualify as an emergency meeting. We'd do it and then make a decision. So we don't want to mess around with it. At the same time, I'm not sure if we should have a particular threshold. Now, Anna, you asked the second question. I know Jim has a question to ask as well, but Anna, what was your second question?
Just about what guidance we're giving for people who are traveling, that, if you've traveled, are we asking that you quarantine a certain amount of time or anything before coming back into the schools?
Yeah, we have not, expected that from parents as far as asking for that information. We stress the CDC, we have stressed the CDC guidelines in the past. The one issue that came up to me, I think, it must have been before Christmas, had to do with someone who was traveling to another country to visit his or her family. And, there were some questions raised to me about, whether or not we should quarantine that person. After looking into it, it really, I don't think would have been fair. In fact, I think it could have been discriminatory because a place in Mexico might be safer, or in another country might be safer than across the river in Wisconsin. It might be safer than me going to a friend's house, in the basement, which I haven't been doing. But, it really, there's so many places where this could be contracted that I'm not sure if traveling is necessarily the one thing we should be asking about.
Thanks for those questions, Anna. Jim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did talk on Tuesday with the MDH, and Holly or Anna or somebody brought up the numbers and the fact that they're 2 weeks behind. They did alert us, and I think even the governor probably alluded to that in his talk, that there's an expectation that numbers in the statewide may be higher after the holiday break. for various reasons. So even with that, though, stated that they project or expect it to be higher, they're still in favor of the plan going forward that we have submitted today. And we talked yesterday, Superintendent Anderson and I, on our monthly one-to-one, and we discussed exactly what he said about the calling a meeting, and we will get together, and if we need to put this whole topic of COVID in the school at the front of our agenda to discuss and talk about, and just share any information we have forward. And I would like at the next meeting on the 19th, we have come up with some type of a discussion about how we go forward once school is in session, how we scale it back, or how we go forward as a board. We didn't even give that consideration back last fall when we gave the superintendent the authority to do whatever's necessary, and we went from in person from K through 4, hybrid and that, to just shutting it down. It probably was something but it didn't happen for like 11 days. So we would have time to meet in a special meeting or emergency meeting to address that, to discuss that. And so we will put this on, I think, on every regular school board meeting. We should be having this conversation, because earlier in the meeting, to talk about vaccinations and all that. Right now, there's currently around 100,000 people in the state of Minnesota that have been vaccinated. We know there's about 5.6 or whatever million. So we're a long ways away to get that rolled out there to many more people. So this is going to be around. Somebody said earlier in the meeting, this is going to be around for a while. We need to be on top of it. But I like the dialogue tonight by the board about, going forward, getting it going, get it started and tried. And but we need to revisit on a regular basis and how we're doing to make sure that we're following the policies, we're following everything. And so we will strive when we set up the meetings, the agenda, to put this towards the front so people aren't waiting till the end to hear what's going on. So thank you.
Jennifer.
Sorry, I think Anna was first.
I was just going to ask, and this is kind of changing the topic a little, so we might need to go back. But we've heard from a lot of 5th and 6th grade teachers about how hybrid is not really working for them, that they're sort of in that weird middle ground of not being elementary and not being secondary. And because of that, those individual teachers have so many more classes that they are prepping, so many different classes, and trying to do that when they're in the hybrid model. The expectation is that they're teaching simultaneously, both online and in person. And what we've heard from, a lot of those teachers is that it isn't working, that for them, they feel like distance has actually been more effective for their students than the hybrid model. So I know I don't expect that this is something that we, have a resolution for tonight, but that's something that I would really like to see is, some brainstorming with the administration to figure out what we can do about that. Whether it's that if we need, is it that there needs to be more staffing so there can be a teacher who is specifically distance only, or, I don't know what the solutions necessarily are. And it's fortunately not my job to come up with them, but that, I think that the teachers are pretty vocal in saying that this is not working very well for those grade levels.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Anna, because some administrators did meet with the 5th and 6th grade teachers. I don't know if it was today or yesterday, but Chris Palmatier gave me a call to kind of brief me or summarize the meeting for me. But before I go into that, I think there are concerns about hybrid for grades 5 through 12, not just 5th and 6th grade. Obviously, 5th and 6th graders are younger, and as you said, they have to teach all subjects. almost every day. And so I think it's more complicated for fifth and sixth graders, but we've heard from teachers in the high school as well that it's very challenging. And some or many would prefer distance only learning because they only have one mode of teaching and learning instead of three. Because as we talked about last time, there are kids in the classroom on a given day. There are some who are not in the classroom, but they are later in the week. And then we have some who are online only. So it's three modes in a typical hybrid situation for grades 5 through 12. Very complicated and probably exhausting for many of those teachers. Now, Chris and I think it was Kayla Bell, maybe another administrator or two as well, I can't remember, but they did meet with a group. There were several who really want to stay in distance learning. But it wasn't unanimous. There are, some others who were, very quiet during the meeting, and at least one, maybe more, voiced that they really want kids back in hybrid or in person. One thing that the admin team is doing next week with the planning day on Monday is to work with that group to talk about ways that the hybrid learning model could change to make it better for students and teachers. So we're hoping to give that a try to see if that would alleviate some of the concerns and some of the issues. I'm not saying it's going to take care of all of it, but hopefully make it a little bit better because I think that's really important as well. Oh, and the other part of that training is to go over some of the Wonders curriculum implementation. And we think that if we can provide more of that work for our elementary teachers, the easier it will be to implement this new curriculum. Wonders is being implemented for the first time this year. Out of all the years to implement a comprehensive curriculum, we picked the first full year of COVID, which I know is challenging. And then also we have some teachers who have never taught that kind of curriculum before. Because they're in paired teaching situations, and that makes it even more challenging. Although I've heard that they're doing an excellent job because, that's what the curriculum they have is what they teach. They don't have past ideas, they don't have past lessons, they aren't, changing up the curriculum. And I know we have a really high quality curriculum that was purchased. So, but anyway, yeah, we are aware of the concerns of fifth and sixth grade teachers. We want to work with them to see if we can make some adjustments and then take it to another level.
Thank you. Jennifer and then Nikki.
I had the same question that Anna had. I would just also add on to that as Karsten, as you mentioned, hybrid learning and teaching is difficult, not just for the fifth and sixth graders, but at the high school level, 7 through 12. And I'm just wondering if similar conversations could happen at the high school that is happening with the fifth and sixth grade teachers and administrators. We've heard from some of those teachers, and there's just a lot going on in those classrooms when there's hybrid learning happening, and it's not fair to the students. It's not equitable learning, and I think we can do better in figuring out a way to improve that education for our students. And the teachers really want to do that. They want to be in the building. They want to be helping the kids. They know that this is where they need to be, but they want to have a voice in making some of those decisions. And they have some really good ideas. So I just hope that they will have the opportunity to meet with administrators to discuss that as well.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I know that Mr. Nemenich has been working with other administrators there and some teachers as well. In fact, we have a meeting, I think tomorrow morning, to go over some of his thinking. I don't know all the details about it yet, but I know he's been looking at some of that as well.
Nikki and then Holly.
So I agree with what Anna and Jennifer had said. With the three of us being new to this, we sure have our work cut out with catching up. And speaking of, I took off work for the last 2 days because this hasn't sat right with me since our last meeting. I've talked to over 60 community members, different diversities. And I will say that me reaching out to the Hispanic community was the first time ever that anybody has reached out to them. And also, you know, we'll get into that another time, but I do want to start strengthening these relationships with our core people on the inside that make this happen. So I just have one question, and we'll get into this in the other meetings, because I'm in business mode. So I would love to talk feelings. We can capture that at 9 a.m. to noon. Those are my feelings hours. I have a job right now. So in this job is, can I attend some of these meetings that you're going to with these teachers, with George Nemenich, with any other group that, you know, I want to be involved as a community member as well, because I do have a strength, community engagement. So I just want to know, is that allowed that me or any other board member can attend some of these meetings that are going to be happening with the staff?
Typically, Nikki, we really focus on the people who need to know the information immediately. So for example, meetings with 5th and 6th grade teachers would be with those teachers, as well as their direct supervisors and the director of teaching and learning, for example. I think as soon as we open the door to school board members or others, I think that complicates the dynamics. Even if everyone is well-intentioned, I think it may not be the best solution. However, there are other ways that are even more impactful, such as, well, you and I had a conversation earlier this week, and you just kind of mentioned it as well, in terms of reaching out or working with different groups of parents. I think that is probably the best way to be involved, because then you can hear sometimes from students and sometimes from parents and staff members and administrators about what's happening. And I think that might be the most powerful way, especially for our people of color and other groups of kids. So I think that would be the best way to be involved.
Okay, can I just touch on that though? Okay, so then we need to start having action, because from what I've gathered, that our staff has not been heard at all. It's like they're getting mowed over. So I just want to make sure that they're being heard and action is being taken. Okay.
Yeah, and again, if staff members are feeling like they're being ignored at a building level, please send them to me. We can meet with them. But one thing I've noticed, and this isn't Nikki Buck, it isn't any particular board member, but we have a lot of talk behind the scenes, and too often the immediate supervisors are left out of the discussion. And it's just really important for them to reach out to their supervisors to be part of it. And I know firsthand of examples of how those conversations have made a difference. So I just think it's important, all of us, and this includes me and board members, is to get our staff members talking directly with their supervisors. I think that's the first step in all of this. At the same time, all of us need to be heard. Our classroom paraprofessionals, special ed paras, teachers, custodians, everyone needs to have a voice at the table. And, we need to make sure that's happening and that we take those things seriously.
Well, I would just reiterate what Nikki said. I think it's really important. Jennifer and Annabelle said it too, that we definitely include our teachers in the conversations. They're on the front lines. We need to make sure that they are comfortable and that they're getting the support that they need. This is an unprecedented time, and my heart just swells with I don't know what the right word is, but I'm very concerned, and I want to make sure that our workplace is a place where people feel heard, that their input is valued, and that their concerns and joys are heard and celebrated or addressed. So we want to make sure that in this time, especially, that we're even more vigilant in making sure that our staff are heard. So thank you for bringing that up, Nikki. And then Holly, you're in the queue.
I just want to thank Jennifer and Anna and Nikki a lot right now for just bringing in all of the really good questions. And I know that people are listening and they're really appreciating it. So thank you three for bringing it to the table again. Now my question is for Shonda. I was thinking about the masks, and this is just really quick. Does just a face shield count as a mask, or do teachers need to actually wear a mask and then the face shield is optional?
They have to wear a mask. That is required. There are a few that have accommodations where they can't wear a mask, and we have had conversations with them, but you have to wear a mask. The face shield is the optional part.
Okay, that's good to know, because in our policy, it's still written from August where we weren't quite as sure. It said neck gaiters, it said face shield. So I just want us to be really clear moving forward. A mask, are we saying the three-tiered, three-ply mask, or are we saying you could take a sock out of your drawer, make a mask, and move forward? Like,
no, yeah, it should be at least a two-ply or a two-layered cloth, or the manufactured paper masks they sell are fine. I've seen some people that just have like a thin kind of knit gaiter that they pull over their face. Those are not.
okay.
I mean, they protect you a little bit, but not really. We provided masks at the beginning of the year. It should be similar to something like that. I don't see a lot of people violating, what they're wearing is working. I've seen a lot of good and creative masks as well, pretty ones, and so there's a lot of variety out there they can wear. But as far as when we're saying wearing a mask and shield, for sure the shield will be just an extra layer, an extra barrier to protect yourself.
Thank you.
And Holly, as a follow-up, I'm going to send an email to the School Board Association to see if they'll be updating their model policy, because our policy is based on that. And so
Okay.
I'll send that out probably tomorrow.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anna.
Our policy does say that a neck gaiter is a definition of a face covering. So yeah, I'm wondering if we need to update that. Is that something you want to wait on, Karsten, to see if the School Board Association is changing that? Or is that something that we should be doing now to specify that it's 2-ply or more? Because that is currently in the definition.
I think, well, in fact, I'm going to type the email actually as we keep discussing to my contact at MSBA, because there are probably multiple places in the policy that should be changed based on the Safe Learning Plan dated December 24th. So it'd be nice to kind of get them all at once. Unfortunately, in the meantime, that means there could be confusing messages, but it'd be nice just to get them all at once. And I know they'll be on it, but I'm going to find out when we're going to get that.
We have had a very comprehensive conversation this evening. So where do we go from here? It sounds like I've heard from a few that we want to keep on with the plan as presented from December 21st. Does somebody want to make a motion formally?
I don't think we need any motion.
No, I don't think so either.
I think we hear loud and clear that we're ready to go forward, and we're going to review it on a regular basis to see how it's going. I'm willing to go forward with what I heard tonight with everybody else, and I think that's what we heard. And I want to applaud Nikki publicly here for speaking up about reaching out to those 60 people into that group that had never been heard from before. I want to thank you for that, and I'll be happy to meet with them too, or or share some information, how to make, what's the best place to start with by contacting somebody there. I'd like to hear their concerns as well. So thank you very much.
Jim, can I just step in real quick and tell you,
Sure.
they added their Facebook page, and they said that they would add any board member to their Facebook page, just to keep in contact with that Hispanic community. I know there's that barrier, but for me, my husband is a second language English speaker. So
Sure.
I have access to communicate a little bit easier than most of our board members probably do. But nonetheless, it was a very warm and heartfelt invitation to all of us. So.
And we've had them come to, when we were meeting in person down at City Hall, somebody came from the Hispanic community and spoke at our board meeting, which was very nice. But unfortunately, I'll be honest, I don't do Facebook, but I have email, I do Instagram. Ooh, big deal. But that's just me. I have enough going on in my life. I don't need to sit there and put and be involved or look at Facebook, but I'll be happy any way I can else to converse or share information with them as well. So, but thank you for doing that. And they can reach out to me, or I can reach out to them if you share the information to me. Either one, I'd be happy to do that. So,
well, for you guys, you got a social eye on your hands.
Good. I don't get me wrong. Computers and all the social media is here. I get it. I just haven't embraced it. I understand computers are the future, are here, been here for a long time. I just surround myself by people that help me understand it and do the work. And but thank you for doing that. And someday I might get on Facebook. Okay, I will, but
The pressure's
I
there.
will. But I'm excited, I think, to get forward with this plan and get some kids back in school to see how it's working safely. And I applaud the custodians, the staff, the administrators that have, and Shonda and her team too, that have made the school as safe as possible. And I'll just echo this out there. It's something that we've been supposed to be doing for decades. If you're not feeling good, stay home. Cover your mouth. Wash your hands. Coughing, sneezing. But if you don't feel good, stay home. Where society always came, well, I don't want to use sick team. I can't burden my staff by missing. You're helping them by being away from them during these untrying times. So
That's well said, Jim.
Thank you. Do anything more? I'll make a motion to adjourn unless somebody else wants to keep going on here, but I think we've met, except for Holly there. I see her hands up. I'm going.
Go ahead, Holly.
I just had one more thing. For future meeting, which is the 11th is workshop, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If that agenda isn't full, I know we talked about some things, but I would really like to hear more about the 5th and 6th grade teachers and where they're headed with the plans, and then also high school, what we're going to do to problem solve around hybrid. Teaching 3 things at the same time is maddening. So we really need to focus on that in order to be prepared for the 19th, if that's where we're headed. But we need to do, like Jennifer and Anna and Nikki said, we need to do better. And we can do that. We have fully competent, capable people to do it. So I just want to get that on one agenda. And then, yes, Jim, you work on that?
Hold on, if I could just quickly respond. We do have an agenda item called the Return to School Plan. It was just left there just in case. And so I think that would be the logical place to talk about 5th and 6th grade teachers as well as high school teachers. So I'll just send a message out to George and Chris to give kind of an update about that. So consider that already added under that section. And then I will note that earlier today, I did ask Lisa to include an extra topic on Monday night's meeting regarding special education administration. And so we'll give the full board and community an update at that time about what we want to, what's happening and what we want to do in the near future.
Great.
Okay.
So
That sounds great. All right. So
Are we
upcoming
done?
Monday. Any other questions? For the new board members, if you could take a look at those committees, and they're on the website here on our school board website, there's a list of committees and the time commitment. So that if you have some ideas of where you think your talents and interests lie, if you could let me know that before Monday, I'll try and put together a draft of committee assignments, and then we can discuss that further so that we at least have a stepping off point in our discussion on Monday. All right. I don't have anything else. It looks like we're at the end of our agenda, so I need a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, Jim
Yes.
makes a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second? Anyone?
Nikki Buck, seconds.
Thank you. We'll take a roll call vote. Holly Tower,
Aye.
Jennifer Tift, aye.
I
Jim Bryant,
Aye.
Nikki Buck,
Aye.
Arlen Derricks,
Aye.
Anna Ostendorf.
I
Chair votes aye. We are adjourned 7-0 at 7:47. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Good
Thank
luck in
you.
school. Good luck in school, everybody, on Tuesday. We'll see everybody Monday.
Yeah.
Take care.